Hi, everyone. Welcome to another amazing topic of conversation. I want to thank my sponsors, the Health Channel. So please sign up for everything that has to do with health issues. Sign up for their newsletter. Alexa's Workspaces. If you need any office space or just a boardroom for a meeting, please reach out to them. And we welcome our great partnership with Aventura Moms, your best resource page in Facebook. So Viviana, thank you.
Thank you
so much for joining us. And
having me.
I know we're going to talk about a topic that I'm really passionate about.
Yes.
So let me ask you something. The Women's Fund just launched the Gender Equity Index. So what is it?
What a great question. The Gender Equity Index is a continuation of our work around the Gender Equity Dashboard. What it is, it's a measurement of how close Miami-Dade County is to reaching gender equity. We look at our 4 pillars. So we look at economic mobility, we look at leadership, we look at health and well-being, and we look at freedom from violence. And within all of those pillars, we come up with this like one score that we can track over time, that we can see, are we getting better? Are we getting worse? Or is there just no progress, right? So it's a number that's going to let us know how close we are to reaching that equity among men and women.
So are you starting now or are you backtracking? Do you have any numbers you can give us? Are we really behind?
So we started this project, which is in support with the Children's Trust. We started this project back in October, and now we're getting ready to launch it in September. I can give you kind of like a sneak peek that's coming out further down in this month, which is economic mobility. And what we're seeing is that there's actually not a lot of progress. We've kind of stayed stagnant as a county. We are looking at data from the past 10 years. So we're analyzing from 2010 to 2021 and seeing, has there been a lot of change? Has there not? And the reality is that it's actually not been a lot of change, at least economic mobility. That's all I can say. That's a sneak peek.
Because worldwide, according to the World Economic Forum, we're 280 years apart in order to close the gender equity.
The World Economic Forum just released their report that it's going to take 113 years for us.
So it went down from
the
report of last year, or
not really. So 113 years is just like equity. When it comes to economic equity, though, we're like 160 years. So it fluctuates a little bit between reaching complete equity and economic. So that's why we're also looking at this in different pillars, because we know it's going to be different for each section.
And there's another study that shows the 230.
So there we go.
Very sad.
Yes, very sad.
So what was the objective of doing this? What do you want to see the end result?
So the Women's Fund started doing the research arm of their work back in 2021, because we believe that without data, women and girls are invisible. So our goal with this index, with the dashboard, is to make issues affecting women and girls visible, giving you all the data, making sure that you know what's going on, because a lot of the times and a lot of the problems that we're running into is actually that the data is not available, or if it is available, it's hard to access, even for us as researchers. So we think it's important to analyze the data, through this gender lens, through disaggregated gender data, and then to provide that information to the community, to other organizations, to legislators, policymakers, right? So that we can actually take action on these issues. Because if you don't know what's going on, then you can't take action.
I think it's amazing. Tell me, are you doing anything based on culture? Because I know culture plays a huge, huge factor.
So culture is a bit more complicated because it has a lot to do with race and ethnicity. And the problem there is that there's not a lot of data. Our gender equity dashboard highlights some of the racial and ethnic disparities through the data. But when it came to the index, it really was too complicated because there were some metrics that we had the data, other metrics we didn't, and that you can see that actually on the dashboard. Some of the information that we have on there, it's not segregated by race and ethnicity. It's only by gender. And some of them is not even by gender, right? So our access to this information is limited. And so we're not able to look at it from a cultural lens if we can't disaggregate it by race and ethnicity.
And that's really important because you were telling me that the Latina or the Hispanic woman is the highest, they have the highest rate of bachelor's degree.
So Miami-Dade County, Latina and Hispanic women have the second highest rate of bachelor's degree or higher, which means that for Miami-Dade County, 70% Latinos, right? That's huge. It means we're pretty up there. But when it comes to median full-time earnings, that's a different story. We're bottom of the barrel there.
What's the difference? What's the different story?
So when you have such a high degree or high rate of bachelor's degree, yet your median full-time earnings are not comparable, it means that there's a pay discrepancy, or that a lot of the women that are getting these higher degrees are going into sectors that don't pay that much. So
still being underpaid.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there's a huge pay gap. I can tell you that let me look at my information. The Hispanic, where is it? Hispanic and Latina women make about the same as Black or African American women at $36,000 in comparison to white women who average around $63,000. So
a huge difference.
A huge difference.
Because when I did some of the research, it was the white women versus man is what, 80 cents to $1.
Yes, about.
The Latina was like, it was like, and I'm not sure exactly, I don't want to give a wrong number, but it was around 64 cents. And the Black woman was like 54.
And that's nationally, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Which means that what I can tell you based on our numbers of Miami-Dade counties is that the gap is a lot bigger. Mostly because males, there's about 13% gap between males and females, and white males actually make $73,000. So we're talking less than
$40,000 a year. So that comes back to the $9 billion that women are losing to men.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's economic power.
It's definitely economic power. So there could be some cultural discrepancies of what's going on, but the reality is it's a pay gap. It's a systemic problem of why Latinas that have the second highest rate of bachelor's degree or higher are average out at 36,000.
Is there anything we can do?
I like to think so.
Because that is really not fair. And I remember the fight that Megan Rapinoe had with the soccer. That
Yeah.
they played the same game. It was watched exactly the same way, but they were paid a third.
Yeah. So a couple of things that can be happening is obviously the pay gap, right? The pay gap is a really big thing because Latinas probably for the same job are making a lot less. The second part is that Latinas and Hispanic women and women in general actually go into lower paying sectors, including hospitality, retail, talking health, right? A lot of the times they're nurses, not doctors. And
choice or cultural?
By whatever they choose. I think a lot of it might be cultural. If they're coming in, if they're immigrating here, they might not have the education yet. If they do get the education, then what are they doing it in? Are they wanting to become teachers? I mean, you have to get a master's degree to become a teacher, right?
Right. So it's a master's degree.
And yet you're still bottom of the barrel when it comes to pay because education doesn't pay that much unless you're a 10-year professor in a university somewhere, right?
Correct.
If you're a teacher or if you're into early learning, right? There's a lot of Hispanics and Latinas that work in early learning and they're not even making $15 an hour and they have to get an education to do that. So I think it's how the society, how the system views women and how the jobs that women are mostly in are regarded as second class positions where they're not regarded as highly as, oh, being in the tech industry or being a doctor, when a teacher is teaching your kids, right? They're teaching the next generation. So they're not regarded as highly. There's a lot of different.
I feel that this conversation was back then. And I feel we haven't even advanced.
Yeah.
That women was considered a second-class citizen and they were considered, oh, you talk about equity and you were considered a feminist. And that was like, okay. And I remember a conversation I had and I said, no, it is not about femininity. It's about equality. I still want somebody to open the door for me. I still feel that there's a big difference about being a woman, being a mom, being a wife. But there's another thing about being equal when it comes to pay.
Right. I mean, and that's what feminism is. It's equality. That's what all feminists want. We want equality between the sexes. We want to be regarded, we want to be paid. If we're doing the same job, we want to be paid the same.
But you know what? I found that a lot of women don't ask.
Because the system is not built for them. And I understand that argument a lot. And I push back on it because there's a lot of times when we tend to view this as an individual problem. Women don't ask. We don't know how to negotiate. We don't know how to do certain things. But the reality is that the system was built so that we didn't have access to it as women. The system was built so that women didn't know how to negotiate. Right? So already we were not part of however the society and the system, or the capitalist system was built. So there's a lot of narrative around that we're expected to learn how to be part of that system. But I go against it. That's me personally. I'm like, well, no. If we're not being invited, we're creating our own table, right? It's like being invited to the table. Well, we're going to create our own.
Right?
So it's a larger systemic.
So it all comes back to education, but we're being educated, and even then we're not being paid.
Exactly. Because
so now it's like a more of getting the right tools to negotiate, to ask, and to look for higher jobs, for higher jobs.
Exactly. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't, as individuals, try to fit into the system, because that's a reality of women that we have to, in order to break glass ceilings, we have to mold to them a little bit, right? To the systems that oppress us. However, I'm saying that once you're in, let's break it down. Let's change it, because it's not working. And women won't advance to the same speed if we keep going this way, right? We've seen no change over time. So clearly we're not doing something right.
But let me give you an example. I mentored one girl. She was doing amazingly well. She got a really good job, the whole thing. We keep in touch and everything. And last year she gave me a call that she found out that there was a guy doing the same job as her, and she was being paid 20,000 less.
Yeah.
And she said, what do I do? So we said, okay, let's write a whole list of what he does, what you do. And you're going to sit down with them and ask them for $10,000 more than him. Because even if they say no, they're going to have to level it at the same level that this guy has, right? Because there wasn't any, I told her there isn't any argument that you're being paid $20,000 less. And she called me, she was so nervous, but what if I lose my job? And that is the common denominator, that you still have to pay your bills, single mom, and you're very afraid that if you lose your job by asking. Well, the good thing and the positive thing was that not only did she get a raise, but she did get the $10,000 above. She was able to show that she was doing beyond the scope work. So I think it's more about, yes, we do have the education. Yes, we do have the degrees, but it's more about empowering women on asking for the right amount.
I think it is about that. I also think it's about, why does that system have to be like that? Why isn't there pay transparency, right? Because she found out.
I don't know how.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know how, and it's very difficult to find out, and they're not going to tell you.
Exactly. So what if instead we started implementing policies that promote pay transparency, where you know what your colleague is making, where you know if there is a big gap between you and your male colleague, right? And that's why what I say when I mean that it's a bigger issue and that it's not individualistic. I do think we need to empower women, and we need to know the rules, and we need to learn how to beat them at their own game or advance, right?
Stand up for ourselves.
Of course. But at the same time, I think we need to be promoting policies that make it easier for women to have the same pay as their male colleagues, and not have to
grounded and find out through
go grounded, find out, or even have to adapt, mold, play the same game, right? Or
I don't think the policies are going to be, first of all, it's going to take forever because you're going to get the backlash of either one side or the other.
Hmm.
And second of all, by the time it gets implemented, if you're a private company, you wouldn't listen anyway.
Yes, I mean, we do know that,
We need to figure out a different way of.
but I don't think it's not. I think if we all unite and we all start thinking this way,
Yeah,
more progress is going to be made, because we can, and I understand that we want to empower women, and I'm all for it because I want to empower women and I want to give them the tools to succeed. But there's a bigger issue. There's a root cause to why we need women empowerment, or why we need to give women
and we shouldn't need it.
Exactly. Like, I don't want a band-aid, keep putting a band-aid on the problem. Instead, just like, what's the medicine that we need to take, and let's get rid of it, right? And that's the scope of how I look at it, how the Women's Fund looks at it, and how I really do believe there's going to be change. Policies, although sometimes slow, right? So it's like the policies are the cure, but there are slower things. So in the meantime, we need to empower women with these tools so that they can succeed and they can get them.
Create a whole education program for the companies.
Absolutely. And a lot of companies are doing it because they do understand.
A lot of companies are actually doing it, but a lot of companies are actually closing their eyes on it, because it's like, okay, she doesn't ask, I'm not going to pay more, and it's revenue for us. And that is the part that we need to change.
She doesn't ask, but there's an underlying, I don't like to blame women oftentimes when I talk about economic things, because I'm like, well, she doesn't ask. Well, I'm like, well, why do they have to pay her less?
Correct.
Right.
But I'm telling you from the other point of view.
Yeah.
Like, if they're not asking, it's more revenue for the company because they're getting the same job done at a lesser price.
Yeah.
And that's
and they're paying them more.
ethics, and that's a whole moral issue.
Yeah. But it is going to take time, and it's going to move slow, but more people on board, the faster it goes, I think.
Oh, let me ask you something. Changing the topic. Latinas are the most educated in Dade County. But there's also the cultural part of it. That you, as a Latina, you get encouraged to go and get your bachelor's degree, to go to college. And then, yes, you go to college, you're looking for an amazing job. And there goes a cultural, get married, have kids, and stay home.
Yes. I've definitely experienced it as a Latina. I'm Puerto Rican. And it's like, you get this encouragement. You have to go to school. You have to get your degree. You have to do something with your life. And then once you get your degree, they're like, oh, ¿y el novio? Oh.
And the kids?
Y los hijos? And the kids, when are you getting married? And all of these questions that really, culturally, they emphasized your role as a woman and how
that bring you down again to the role of being a housewife and a mom.
To the role of being this caretaker, right? You have to be at home with your kids. And it's this double standard that women have to live up to. You have this degree, yet you're not using your degree because you had kids and your family wanted you to take care of your kids. So, and then you're making less money, which means that you're less economically dependent or independent, right? You're probably dependent on that husband who is the one working. So it creates a bit of a cycle. And I think it's great that parents especially Latino and Hispanic parents are encouraging their daughters to get a higher education. I think that's wonderful, but then we need to change how we look at afterwards. She gets a degree, then she should work, right? She wants to work.
I remember when I was growing up and my family originally came from Europe, and I remember my parents saying like, okay, you go to college, get a degree, work, and if you get married, you help your husband working. And you balance the whole thing. But on the other side, they were women that were like, okay, no, you graduate from school, you find a husband, and you take care of your home, and you cook and take care of the kids.
Exactly. And
it's a cycle.
It is a cycle.
So they instill in you this guilty feeling of, yes, I want to get married, I want to have kids, but I also want financial independence. I also want to be recognized for a career that I've made.
Right, right. So it's very much quite contradicting what happens.
That
right?
is exactly the word, contradicting.
You're encouraged to get this education, and yet then you're encouraged to be at home, right? Be taking care of your kids. And I think it's also a problem for the economy.
Yeah.
If half of your population is staying at home, you're losing out on billions of dollars that women generate just by being part of the workforce.
Oh, and we're forgetting, and with this, I'm gonna end it because we're out of time, is that women is the biggest economic force. We handle over $8 trillion around the world.
Mm-hmm.
Because women make the choices of what we buy. Yep.
And just to let you know, for Miami-Dade County, 70% of the workforce is men, 56% is women. When by no means equal in the workforce either. And that is looking at full-time. If you look at part-time, there's actually a lot more women, but that actually has to do with this motherhood, right? Being a mother, taking care of your kids, taking care of their elderly, this caretaker role that you have to take on as a woman. So leave it at that.
We'll leave it at that, and then to be followed up after you launch the index and we learn more about it. So,
yes, definitely.
Thank you so much to everyone. Until next week, and above all, stay safe. Have a wonderful week.